In other news, the Blackwood Forest disappearances continue to baffle authorities.
Welcome to Mr. Bing Watch Channel. My name is Mr. Bing, and I'm about to tell you something that will haunt you long after this video ends. But before I do, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's not a creepypasta. It's not some Hollywood fabrication designed to scare you for profit. This is a documented case. 4 people vanished from Blackwood Forest. Their disappearance was investigated by state police. Their families are still searching for answers. And the only survivor, the only person who knows what really happened, has spent the last year trying to warn people. His name is Alex. And if you're brave enough to hear his story, I'm asking you to do one thing. Subscribe to this channel right now. Because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about Halloween. Everything you thought was safe. Let me take you back to September 29th, 3 weeks before Halloween, to the moment when 4 friends made a decision that would destroy their lives forever. Alex was sitting at his desk at work when his phone buzzed. It was Ben, his best friend since college. Ben with his stupid marketing job and his perpetual optimism and his laugh that could make a room light up. Alex almost didn't answer. He had reports due, deadlines looming. His life was barely holding together as it was, but something made him pick up. "Dude, we're doing it!" Ben said before Alex could even say hello. Not asking, telling, that was Ben's way. Full Halloween camping trip. Me, you, Sarah, and Jill. Blackwood Forest, out past Highway 12. This weekend, I'm booking the campsite right now. Alex's stomach tightened. He'd heard whispers about Blackwood Forest, fragments of stories that never quite came together. Something about the place that made locals go quiet when it was mentioned. But he couldn't articulate why. And Ben wasn't the type to be deterred by vague unease. "Ben, I don't know," Alex started. 3 years, Ben interrupted. 3 years since we've all been together. No phones, no work, no excuses. When's the last time you felt alive, Alex? When's the last time you weren't just going through the motions? That hit harder than Ben knew, because Alex wasn't going through the motions. He was drowning in them. His job felt meaningless. His apartment felt like a box. His life felt like it was happening to someone else entirely. And the thought of getting away, of spending time with people who actually knew him, who actually mattered, it appealed to something desperate inside him. "Okay," Alex heard himself say. "Okay, I'm in." "Yes, I knew you would be. This is going to be epic, man. This is going to change everything." If only Alex had known how right Ben was. 2 weeks later, Alex stood at the edge of Blackwood Forest as the sun began its descent. The moment he stepped out of his car, he felt it. Not something he could name, but something he could feel in his chest. A wrongness, a presence. The forest stretched before him in all directions. Ancient pines so tall they seemed to touch a sky that felt impossibly far away. The canopy was so thick that even though it was only late afternoon, shadows dominated everything. The air was cold, not the pleasant autumn chill, but something bone-deep and penetrating. Something that made his instincts scream at him to get back in his car and drive away. Ben arrived 15 minutes later, practically exploding out of his truck with his characteristic energy. "Alex, this is it, man. Can you feel it? This is where real experiences happen. This is where we remember what it means to be alive." Ben pulled him into a bear hug, and Alex forced himself to relax into it. Ben's enthusiasm was contagious. It always had been. Maybe Alex was just being paranoid. Maybe the wrongness he felt was just the unfamiliarity of the place. Sarah arrived next, and Alex felt some of his tension ease. Sarah had always been the grounding force in their group. She was a nurse, someone who faced trauma and death and suffering every single day. If anyone could keep a level head in a strange place, it was Sarah. She emerged from her sedan in hiking boots and a flannel shirt, her movements efficient and deliberate. When she saw Alex, her eyes crinkled at the corners. Genuine warmth that made him feel, for just a moment, like things might be okay. "Hey, Alex, it's good to see you. Ben's been driving me crazy with excitement about this trip for weeks." "That sounds like Ben," Alex said, and it did. It sounded exactly like Ben, overconfident, optimistic, never quite seeing the danger until it was too late. Jill was the last to arrive, and her entrance was characteristically dramatic. She pulled in with music blasting and her window down, a collection of tattoos visible on her arms and a nose ring catching the last rays of sunlight. Jill had always been the free spirit, the one who said yes to everything, who questioned nothing, who lived like consequences didn't exist. "The gang's all here," she shouted, jumping out of her car. Okay, people, I am ready to disconnect from the tyranny of society and reconnect with our primal selves. Also, I brought 3 bottles of wine, expensive wine, which means I'm either confident about this trip or preparing for disaster. Maybe both. They spent the next hour setting up camp. Ben and Sarah assembled the main tent while Alex and Jill gathered firewood. As they worked, Alex kept noticing small things. The way the forest seemed to lean in around them. The way sounds didn't quite behave the way they should. Voices seemed to get absorbed into the trees instead of echoing back. The way the light seemed to drain from the sky not gradually but in sudden, dramatic drops, as if darkness was actively pulling daylight away. "You okay?" Jill asked, noticing Alex staring into the trees. "Yeah," Alex lied. "Just taking it in. It's beautiful." "It is," Jill agreed, but her voice had changed. It had lost some of its lightness. "But it's also, I don't know, it's creepy in a way I can't really explain. Look at how thick the trees are. Look at the way the shadows move wrong. It's like the whole forest is watching us." Alex didn't respond, because he felt it too, and acknowledging it out loud would make it too real. By the time darkness fell completely, they were all gathered around a crackling bonfire. The flames threw dancing shadows across their faces, making them look alternately comforted and unsettled. Ben had opened beers. Sarah was roasting marshmallows with the precision of someone used to getting things right. Jill had started on the wine, and Alex was listening to the forest. Because the forest was loud in its own way, wind moving through branches with a sound like whispers, distant animal calls that didn't quite sound like any animal Alex knew, the occasional crack of a branch as if something was moving through the trees, keeping pace with them, evaluating them. "So," Jill said, her second glass of wine giving her the kind of loose confidence that made her dangerous. "I did some research before we came out here. Blackwood Forest has one of the highest disappearance rates in the state. We're talking about 7 people in the last 30 years. All of them gone on Halloween. All of them vanished without a trace." Ben laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, come on. You're really going to do this? Really going to start the horror movie bullshit on the first evening?" "It's not bullshit," Jill said calmly, taking another sip of wine. "There's a whole legend about this place. Goes back over 100 years. Something dark happened here. Something that cursed the forest. Every Halloween, when the veil between worlds is thinnest, something walks. And it takes people. Not to kill them, to claim them, to make them part of something eternal." Sarah had gone very quiet. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured in the way of someone trying not to alarm anyone, but unable to keep the truth entirely hidden. "I don't believe in demons," she said, "but I do believe that places have weight. I believe that trauma leaves imprints. And this forest," she paused, looking out into the darkness beyond the firelight, "this forest feels heavy, like something bad happened here, something that never really left." "Okay, we're not doing this," Ben said, standing up. His earlier enthusiasm had been replaced with something harder, something defensive. "We came here to have fun, to get away, not to sit around a fire and convince ourselves that we're in some horror movie. So let's move on. Let's talk about something else." But they couldn't move on, because something had shifted. The easy camaraderie they'd started with had fractured into something more fragile. Underneath every word for the rest of the evening was a current of unease. And when they finally climbed into their sleeping bags around midnight, arranging themselves in a circle inside the large tent, Alex was hyper-aware of every sound outside. The owls that called in the distance didn't sound like owls. The wind didn't sound like wind. And underneath it all, there was something else. A rhythm, a pattern, like footsteps, like something was circling their camp, like something was deciding what to do about them. "You asleep?" Ben's whisper came from across the tent around 2 in the morning. "No," Alex admitted. "Jill got in your head. She got in all our heads, but it's fine. It's just a forest. Just trees and darkness and our own paranoia." "Yeah," Alex said, but he wasn't sure he believed it. And judging by the way Ben's voice had wavered, Ben wasn't sure either. Morning came like a mercy. The moment sunlight began filtering through the tent's fabric, the oppressive feeling lifted slightly. They emerged to cook breakfast, eggs and bacon that tasted like smoke, and by the time they'd eaten, Ben had regained some of his usual confidence. "Okay, so I've been thinking," he said, settling into his camping chair with a fresh coffee. That whole thing last evening was just us projecting. We came into this place with preconceived notions, so we started seeing things that weren't there. It's psychology. It's normal. Except 7 people have disappeared, Jill said quietly. And they disappeared on specific dates, on Halloween, not randomly throughout the year. On a single night when, according to the legend, something specifically comes hunting. That doesn't prove anything, Ben said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Sarah, who had been quiet since they woke up, suddenly spoke. I want to see it. The clearing. The place where the legend says the ritual happened. If we're going to spend all day and all evening in this forest, I want to know what we're dealing with. Ben's jaw tightened. That's a terrible idea. It's the only idea that makes sense, Sarah countered. We came here. We felt something wrong. We can either sit around here slowly freaking ourselves out, or we can go investigate. We can know what we're afraid of instead of just imagining it. She's right, Jill said. I mapped out the location based on the legend. It's about a mile northeast. We can be there and back in an hour. They prepared a small day pack. Water, snacks, flashlights they probably wouldn't need in daylight but wanted to have anyway. As they set out, the forest seemed different than it had felt in the evening. The sunlight, though filtered by the dense canopy, made things feel more real, more manageable, but Alex still felt it. That prickling at the base of his skull, that sense of being watched. The trail wasn't official. It was barely a trail at all, just a series of marks cut into tree bark, ancient and weathered, but still visible if you knew where to look. Someone had maintained these marks, or they'd simply never fully healed over decades or centuries. As they walked deeper into the forest, Alex noticed that the trees began to change. They became denser, the spaces between them narrower, the canopy so thick that they felt like they were walking through a tunnel of green. The temperature dropped, the air grew heavier. It's here, Jill whispered, even though there was no need to whisper. We're close. And then they found it. The clearing opened up suddenly, as if the forest had deliberately parted to reveal something hidden. In the center, arranged in a rough circle, were stones, not natural formations. These had been moved by human hands, ancient hands. The stones were massive, weathered smooth by centuries of weather, and carved into their surfaces were symbols. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you tried to focus on them directly. Symbols that felt like they had meaning, dark meaning, ritual meaning. Jesus, Ben breathed. Alex felt his heart begin to race. The symbols made his brain hurt. Looking at them was like trying to read something in a language that wasn't meant for human comprehension. And the air in this clearing, it was different, colder, and it moved differently. Instead of flowing naturally, the air seemed to spiral, as if something invisible was stirring it deliberately. This is real, Sarah said, her voice devoid of any comfort. Whatever created the legend, whatever happened here, it's real. This isn't some made-up story. Someone performed a ritual in this place. Someone did something intentional. We need to leave, Alex said. The words came out before he decided to speak them. Right now, we need to get out of this clearing and back to the campsite. Why? Ben demanded. We're here. We're investigating. This is... No, Alex interrupted. No, this is wrong. Everything about this is wrong. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't have come to this forest. I can feel it. I can feel something in this place, something that's noticed us now. Sarah didn't argue. She just started walking back toward the trail. Jill followed immediately. And after a long moment, Ben did too. The walk back seemed to take twice as long. Every snapped branch sounded like a gunshot. Every rustle in the undergrowth made them tense. And once, Alex could have sworn he heard footsteps alongside their own, matching their pace. When he turned to look, there was nothing but trees. By the time they emerged from the forest near their campsite, they were all visibly shaken. The easy camaraderie they'd shared the day before was gone, replaced by something tighter, more fragile. That was a mistake, Ben said finally. We shouldn't have gone there. No, Sarah agreed. We shouldn't have. And we shouldn't have come to this forest at all. They spent the rest of the day trying to pretend everything was normal. They cooked lunch. They joked and laughed. But it was forced. Around 4 in the afternoon, Jill's other friends started arriving. Marcus and his girlfriend, Teresa. 2 others Alex didn't know well. With more people around, the tension eased slightly. There was safety in numbers. There was distraction in conversation and laughter. Ben decided they'd throw a big Halloween party vibe. Costumes, music from a portable speaker, a bonfire so massive it seemed like a defiant gesture against the encroaching darkness. For a few hours, it almost worked, almost felt normal. But then the sun set, and the forest changed. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was gradual, but undeniable. The darkness didn't just fall, it seemed to rise up from the ground. The trees seemed to lean in closer. The sounds of the forest shifted from the normal nighttime sounds of rustling leaves and distant owl calls to something else, something intentional. Alex noticed Sarah first. She'd pulled away from the group, positioned on the edge of the firelight where it was easier to see into the darkness beyond. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes were tracking something. "Have you heard them?" she asked Alex quietly, pulling him away from the main group. "Heard what?" But even as he asked, he knew. The footsteps. They've been circling the camp since the sun went down. The same pattern, same direction, same pace, like something's pacing around us, evaluating us. Alex had heard them. He'd been hearing them for the past hour, trying to convince himself they were just wildlife. A deer, maybe. Some kind of forest animal that was curious about the humans and their fire. But he knew better. The footsteps were too deliberate, too calculated. "Probably just an animal," he said, trying to convince himself as much as her. "An animal moving in a perfect circle around our camp?" Sarah's voice was sharp. "An animal that maintains the exact same distance? That's not an animal, Alex. That's something intelligent. That's something that's hunting." Before Alex could respond, Ben materialized out of the group gathered around the bonfire. "What's going on?" he asked, and Alex could hear the tension in his voice. Ben already knew something was wrong. He could feel it too. "Nothing," Alex said, "just talking." Ben studied them for a moment, then seemed to decide he didn't have the energy to push. "Everyone's having fun. Marcus brought vodka. We're going to do a bonfire story competition soon. It's going to be—" The wind hit them like a physical force. It wasn't a natural gust. It came from multiple directions simultaneously, east, then north, then south, circling them like something alive. It knocked over the speaker. It sent embers spiraling up from the bonfire in a spectacular fountain of orange and red. And underneath the sound of the wind, there was something else. A sound like breathing. A sound like something massive taking in air. And then it stopped. The wind died completely. The embers fell. The forest went still in a way that felt worse than any sound could be. "Did everyone feel that?" Marcus called out, trying to laugh it off. "That was intense! Nature's showing off!" But no one was laughing, and everyone had felt it. They'd all felt the intelligence behind that wind, the deliberation, the intention. Around 9 o'clock, Derek, one of the people Alex didn't know well, decided to explore the forest. He was drunk, increasingly drunk as the evening had worn on, and drunk people make poor decisions. Despite Ben's half-hearted attempts to stop him, Derek grabbed a flashlight and headed into the trees. 10 minutes later, he came running back. He emerged from the darkness beyond the firelight, moving faster than Alex had thought a human could move, crashing through the underbrush, gasping for breath. His face was pale. His eyes were wide and darting, looking back over his shoulder constantly. "Something!" Derek gasped, collapsing near the fire. "There's something in those woods. Something huge. It was following me. I could hear it breathing. I could hear it moving through the trees right behind me, and it was so close I could almost feel—" "You were drunk," Ben said quickly. "You got spooked. Your imagination." "I'm not drunk," Derek interrupted. "Or maybe I was, but that doesn't matter. There's something out there, something that shouldn't exist, and it was hunting me." The energy around the campfire shifted. People who had been relaxed suddenly became tense. People who had been smiling suddenly weren't. The forest, which had been scenery, suddenly became a threat. And that's when Teresa found the symbol. She'd been taking photos of the camp setup for Instagram, trying to capture the Halloween vibe, when she noticed something carved into one of the nearby trees. It was fresh. The exposed wood inside the carved marks was light-colored, still faintly moist. The symbol itself was similar to the ones they'd found in the clearing, but not quite the same. Different. Angrier somehow. "What the hell?" she called out, pointing. Everyone gathered around the tree. The symbol was maybe 4 feet up the trunk, and it had definitely not been there that morning. Alex was certain of that. They would have noticed. "This is impossible," Marcus said, running his fingers over the carving without quite touching it. Someone would have had to be here recently in the last few hours, but we haven't seen anyone. We haven't heard anyone. Maybe it's been here the whole time, Ben suggested, but his voice was uncertain. Maybe we just missed it. No, Sarah said quietly. She pressed her palm against the mark. This is fresh, really fresh, like something carved it while we were all here, while we were all watching, and we still didn't see it. The implications of that hung in the air. Something had been close enough to carve a symbol into a tree at their campsite, close enough that they should have seen it. And they hadn't. Around 9:30, the wind died. The forest went completely still, and in that stillness, Jill heard movement in the trees beyond the firelight. There, she whispered, pointing. Do you see it? For a moment, there was nothing, and then a shadow moved. Not in the way shadows normally move. This shadow moved with intention. It moved with intelligence. It moved from one tree to another with impossible speed, pausing for just a fraction of a second before moving again. What the fuck is that? Derek breathed. The shadow stopped moving. And for just a fraction of a second, Alex could have sworn he saw a shape. It doesn't just disappear, it marks a place and it comes back. It hunts. It feeds. That's insane, Ben said. That's literally insane. Is it? Jill looked at him. Is it really? Because we all just saw something that shouldn't exist. We all just experienced something that doesn't have a rational explanation. So maybe the insane thing is pretending this isn't happening. Around 11, the wind died completely. The sudden silence was worse than any sound could have been. The forest went still in a way that felt oppressive. No insect noises, no bird calls, no rustling of leaves, just absolute perfect silence. And in that silence, Alex heard the footsteps. But this time they weren't circling. They were approaching directly, coming from the northeast, from the direction of the clearing with the stones. The footsteps were heavy, deliberate, unhurried. They crunched on dead leaves with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Crunch, 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 getting closer. Do you hear that? Alex asked. Yeah, Sarah whispered. Yeah, I hear it. Ben stood up, grabbing a flashlight with hands that trembled slightly. Hello? He called out into the darkness. Is someone out there? The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound had been, because silence meant waiting. Silence meant something was deciding what to do. Jesus Christ, Jill breathed. Don't engage with it. Don't acknowledge it. With what? Ben demanded, his voice cracking. There's probably someone out there, another camper, a forest ranger who heard Derek talking about something in the woods. There's a rational explanation for this. There's no one, Alex said quietly. He was standing now, too, though he didn't remember deciding to stand. There's nothing out there that's human, nothing out there that's trying to help. I can feel it. Ben aimed the flashlight toward the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, and for just a moment, Alex thought he saw something, a shape, a form, something that was too large and shaped all wrong. Then it was gone. Hello? Ben called again. We're campers. We're just trying to camp. The response didn't come as a sound. It came as a feeling, a sudden, overwhelming sense of being watched. The hair on Alex's arm stood on end. His heart, which had been racing, suddenly seemed to stop entirely. The temperature around them dropped so dramatically that they could all see their breath. Frost formed on the tent beside them. Ice crystals appeared on the grass. Get inside, Sarah said. Her voice had changed. It was different now, authoritative. The voice of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't going to waver from it. Inside the tent, now, move. They didn't argue. Ben doused the bonfire with water bottles, and they practically threw themselves at the tent entrance. Sarah worked the zipper frantically, pulling it closed with movements that were almost violent in their urgency. Inside the tent, they sat in absolute darkness, except for Ben's flashlight, which cast a weak beam that only made the shadows feel more dramatic. Their breathing was synchronized in fear, rapid, shallow, like four people trying not to be heard by something that could hear them anyway. What the hell is happening? Ben's voice cracked. He sounded younger suddenly. He sounded like a child who'd finally realized that the monster under the bed was real. It's here, Jill whispered. It's finally here. It's decided that we're worth taking. Don't say that, Sarah interrupted. Don't finish that thought. Just don't. Outside the tent, they heard it move. They heard it circling the small structure. They heard the sound of something massive breathing. They heard something that sounded like the fabric of the tent being tested, pushed, evaluated. And then, for hours, They waited. They watched shadows move across the nylon walls, shadows that couldn't possibly be real because there was no light source to create them. They heard clicking noises, sounds like bones cracking, a dragging sound like something massive being pulled through the forest. And underneath it all, they heard breathing. Something's breathing. Something that was evaluating whether it wanted to come through the tent fabric and take them right then, or whether it wanted to wait, whether it wanted to play with its food a little longer. By 2 in the morning, Ben was openly crying. By 3, Sarah had gone completely silent, her eyes fixed on a spot in the darkness that Alex couldn't see. Jill was murmuring something. Prayers, Alex thought, though he couldn't be certain. The words weren't coming in any language he recognized. And Alex was listening, always listening, because he knew that as long as he could hear it, he could track it. As long as he knew where it was, maybe he could figure out what it was and how to survive it. When sunrise finally came, it felt like a reprieve from execution. The moment the first light began to filter into the tent, everything changed. The sounds stopped. The feeling of being watched released them like a grip loosening. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and whatever had been out there had retreated with the darkness. They didn't talk when they emerged from the tent. They moved like automatons. They drank water and ate granola bars, neither of them having the energy for a proper breakfast. The fire had burned down to ash, and the ash looked like it had been there for years instead of hours. "We're leaving," Ben said flatly, not asking, not suggesting, stating a fact. "Right now, we pack everything into the truck, we drive out, we figure out a story later, but we're not spending another moment in this place." No one argued. They moved with desperate urgency, throwing gear into bags without bothering to organize it. Tent poles got mixed with sleeping bags. Cooking equipment got shoved in haphazardly. Everything was going into the truck. They just needed to leave. They were almost done. Jill was tying the last sleeping bag to the roof rack when they heard it. Laughter. Not human laughter, though it had the basic structure of it. More like the sound a laugh would make if you ran it through a meat grinder and then played it backward. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the trees in a way that made it impossible to locate a source. They all froze. "What?" Ben started to say. The laughter grew louder, more intense. The forest seemed to vibrate with it. The trees themselves seemed to recoil. Birds erupted from the canopy in a panicked explosion of wing beats and calls, creating a chaos of sound and movement that made it hard to hear anything else. The laughter stopped. In its place came a sound like wind, but not natural wind. This wind had intention. This wind had a voice underneath it, a voice that was trying to form words, to communicate something. It built and built, becoming louder, more present, until it felt like the very air might shatter. And then, from the direction of the forest path, the path that led toward the clearing with the stones, something began to emerge. It was tall, impossibly tall, so tall that it had to duck beneath the lower branches of the trees as it moved. Its shape was humanoid, only in the most basic, superficial sense. It was bipedal. It had 2 arms and a head. Everything else was wrong. The proportions were off, stretched, and elongated in ways that human bodies weren't designed to achieve. It moved in a way that suggested too many joints, too much flexibility, muscles and sinews working in coordination with something that looked like intelligence but felt like hunger. Sarah made a sound then, a whimper that barely qualified as vocalization. Jill actually screamed, a high-pitched sound that cut through the morning air and seemed to echo off something unseen in the darkness of the forest. The thing's head turned toward them. Alex couldn't describe its face. He'd tried many times to therapists and to police officers and to doctors, but every time he'd failed. Our brains aren't really equipped to process what he saw. There were features that approximated eyes, a mouth, something you might call a nose, but they were arranged wrong. They were working independently instead of in concert with each other. The closer Alex tried to look, the less sense it made. It was like his brain was actively trying not to perceive it correctly. What he remembers with perfect clarity is the intention in that gaze, the absolutely, utterly undeniable intelligence, the ancient malevolence, the hunger. "Run," Alex heard himself say. The word came from somewhere outside himself. "Run, run, 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 run." Ben didn't need to be told twice. He bolted for the truck, keys already in hand. Jill was faster, her youth and terror combining into pure speed as she bolted for the driver's side. Sarah had frozen, her fight-or-flight response apparently malfunctioning entirely. Alex grabbed her wrist and ran. Behind them, the thing moved. It didn't run. Its gait was too strange for that. too uncoordinated and yet somehow perfect. But it moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible. Alex could hear something like breathing, like the sound of too much air moving through passages that weren't quite shaped for air. Come on, come on, come on. Alex was saying it like a mantra, pulling Sarah through the underbrush. Her legs were working on pure adrenaline now, her mind having given up trying to process what was happening. They reached the truck just as Jill was turning the engine on. Ben was already in the passenger seat, door slamming behind him. Alex dove into the back seat with Sarah, and Jill didn't bother with any pretense of controlled driving. She floored the accelerator, and the truck lurched forward with a violence that nearly threw them all across the interior. For a moment, a single, glorious moment, Alex thought they might make it. He thought they might actually escape. They might actually survive. Then Ben screamed, but it wasn't a scream of fear. It was something else. Surprise, realization, horror at something he was seeing. Alex looked to his left, following Ben's gaze out the window, and his entire world dropped away. Ben was there, in the truck with him, and also not there. Alex watched it happen. Ben turned in his seat, the Ben he'd known for over a decade, the Ben with the stupid jokes and the infectious laugh and the genuine heart that had made him one of the best people Alex had ever known. And he began to turn transparent. It wasn't gradual. It was like someone was erasing him, taking an eraser to reality itself and simply removing him from the world. His hand became translucent. His arm followed. His face, that familiar face with the expression of confused terror frozen on it, began to fade into nothing. "What?" Ben tried to say, but his voice was becoming insubstantial, echoing and distant like it was coming from very far away. In the side mirror, Alex could see it. The thing from the forest, its impossibly long arm reaching through the truck bed, fingers wrapped around Ben's chest, pulling him out of their reality and into something else. Something that existed in the spaces between moments. "No, no, 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 no," Jill was saying, her voice breaking. She was hitting the gas harder, but the truck wouldn't move faster. They were already maxed out, going maybe 70 down a poorly maintained forest road, and the truck was screaming in protest. The last they saw of Ben, he wasn't screaming anymore. He was just smiling, that warm, familiar smile they'd all known for so long, and then he was gone, completely gone. The door beside Alex slammed shut from the inside, moved by hands Alex couldn't see, as if something invisible was tidying up after itself, as if it was finished with Ben and had moved on to the next course. For a moment, there was just silence and the sound of the truck engine straining at its limits. Then Sarah began to laugh. Not the hysterical laugh of someone in shock, though that would have been understandable. This was different. This was Ben's laugh, his exact laugh, his rhythm, his inflection. Alex turned to look at her, and every cell in his body screamed to run. It was still Sarah. Her face, her body, her clothes, but her eyes were wrong. They didn't move the way Sarah's moved. They tracked things independently. They were looking at him with an intensity that felt ancient and hungry and absolutely, fundamentally alien. "Alex," the thing wearing Sarah's skin said, using a voice that started as hers and then modulated into something layered, something that sounded like multiple voices speaking in terrible harmony. "Do you understand now? Do you finally see what we are? What we've been waiting for?" Alex couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare as this impossible thing that was and wasn't Sarah leaned toward him. "It doesn't kill," the Sarah thing continued, and Alex could hear Ben's voice in there too, underneath Sarah's voice, speaking in synchronization. "What is death compared to eternity? What is death compared to becoming part of something that will walk these woods forever? We take souls, we consume them, we make them part of us, and we grow stronger with every harvest, stronger, hungrier, capable of extending our reach further and further into your world." "You're not Sarah," Alex whispered. "No," it agreed, "but I am also all of the Sarahs that came before, all the people who were taken in all the years, and I am Ben now too. He's here. He's always here. Do you want to hear him? Do you want to know what it's like to be conscious inside something like this? To be aware but unable to move? To be trapped in an endless Halloween hunting and being hunted forever?" Alex lunged for the door handle. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely work it, but he managed to throw himself out of the moving truck. He hit the forest road hard, rolling, asphalt tearing into skin and fabric and bone. Behind him, he heard the truck continue, heard Jill's scream cut short, cut off in a way that made it clear something horrifying was happening to her. He didn't look back. He ran. His leg was injured. He could feel it, something in his left knee screaming with every impact. But he ran anyway. He ran deeper into the forest, off the road, not caring about direction. All he knew was that he had to get away. He had to survive. He had to make it out so that someone would know what happened here. He ran through the trees until his lungs felt like they were going to burst. He ran until the forest became indistinguishable, until he had no idea where he was or how he'd gotten there. He ran until his injured leg finally gave out, and he collapsed behind a massive fallen log, gasping for breath, muscles screaming, convinced every second that something was going to grab him from behind. That's when the forest went quiet, completely, impossibly quiet. And in that silence, Alex understood. The thing had what it wanted. It had Ben. It had Sarah. It had Jill. 3 souls to add to its collection. 3 people to become part of its eternal existence, trapped in that place, forced to walk those woods for all eternity, hunting for new victims, trying to lure more people in so that maybe, just maybe, they might become part of something that could replace them. Alex was the only one left, the only survivor, the only witness. He doesn't know how long he stayed there behind that log. Time felt meaningless. The forest around him seemed to breathe with patience, the kind of infinite patience only something truly eternal could have. Eventually he heard footsteps, but these weren't the heavy, wrong footsteps of the thing. These were normal, human footsteps, almost jogging. A radio crackled. A voice called out, "Hello? Is anyone out here? We got a 911 call about a possible emergency on Blackwood Road." It was a forest ranger, an actual living, breathing human being in a uniform, carrying a radio and a flashlight in the morning sun. Alex nearly wept with relief. "Here!" he shouted. "I'm here!" The ranger found him in minutes, a kind man named Officer Henderson who immediately radioed for an ambulance when he saw the state Alex was in, covered in blood from his tumble off the truck, clothes torn, eyes wide with a terror that no human should have to experience. "What happened?" Henderson kept asking. "Where are the others?" Alex couldn't answer, or rather, he couldn't answer in a way that the officer would believe. So he said nothing, and eventually Henderson stopped asking and just helped him to his vehicle. The rest is a blur of hospital visits and police statements and search and rescue operations. They found Jill's truck about 2 miles down the road, empty. They found Ben's and Sarah's phones near the campsite. They found Jill's wallet, her ID card, her car keys. They found the overturned campfire, the abandoned tent, evidence of struggle. They never found them. They never found any bodies. They never found any sign of what actually happened beyond the impossible fact that 3 people had vanished without a trace. The police investigated, filed reports, called it a potential disappearance. There was a search. There was talk about foul play. Theories were floated about serial killers or a cult operating in the forest. But eventually, after 2 weeks of finding nothing, the search was called off. The story faded from the news. People moved on the way they always do. But Alex knows the truth. He knows what really happened in those woods, and he knows what the thing in the forest really wants. It doesn't just take lives, it takes souls, the essence of a person, the thing that makes them who they are, and it keeps them. It forces them to become part of its eternal hunt. Ben, Sarah, and Jill aren't dead. They're worse than dead. They're conscious, trapped, unable to escape, forced to walk those woods year after year, forever as part of that thing's collection. And when the next Halloween comes around, when the veil grows thin again, they'll be out there too, hunting, looking, trying to lure someone in so that maybe, just maybe, they might become part of something that could replace them. That's what the legend doesn't tell you. The disappearances aren't random. The thing chooses carefully. It takes people with unfinished business, people with regrets, people with connections to others, because those people are easier to weaponize. Those people can be used to lure more people in. Ben will reach out. He'll seem normal. He'll ask Alex to come find them. And if Alex ever goes, the thing will take him too. This is why Alex is telling this story. This is why he's spending his days trying to warn people. Because you need to know. You need to be aware. You need to understand that some places are genuinely dangerous, and some things are genuinely real, and some decisions can't be undone. Alex hasn't been back to Blackwood Forest. He never will. But last Halloween, his phone buzzed. A text from Ben. Just one message. "Alex, come find us. We're waiting." He didn't respond. He stayed home with all the lights on, doors locked, windows covered, refusing to go outside until midnight had passed, and November 1st had begun. This year, Alex is getting more messages from Ben, from Sarah, from Jill. They're getting more insistent, more personal. They're reminding him of things only they would know, using memories that only they would have. They're saying things like, "Soon, Alex. Soon we'll be strong enough to leave the forest. Soon we'll be able to come to you. Soon you won't have to choose whether to come find us because we'll come find you." This is why I'm telling you this. Alex needs someone to know. He needs someone to remember. He needs you to understand what's really out there in the places where people go missing. He needs you to promise him that no matter what, you will never go to Blackwood Forest. You will never venture into those woods. You will never think that the stories are just stories. Because they're not stories. They're warnings. And warnings exist because people didn't listen. Because people thought they were too smart, too skeptical, too rational to be in danger. If you're watching this right now and you think this is fake, I understand. I really do. But I'm asking you to do something. Google Blackwood Forest disappearances. Look at the records. Look at the documented missing persons reports filed with state police. Look at the 7 names, 7 people, all missing on Halloween, all vanished without a trace, all with families still searching for answers. Then tell me this is fiction. Tell me Alex is lying. Every Halloween, people go missing in places just like this, in forests and in old houses and in places that shouldn't exist but do. They go missing because they didn't believe. They went missing because they thought the stories were just stories. They went missing because they were brave, or curious, or desperate for connection with their friends. The thing in those woods is patient. It's been patient for hundreds of years. It will continue to be patient. It will wait until you let your guard down. It will wait until you think you're safe, and then it will take everything from you, your life, your soul, your existence, your ability to ever be at rest. Please, if you take nothing else from this, take this. Never venture into the deep woods on Halloween. Never dismiss the old stories. Never think that you're too smart or too skeptical to be in danger. Because the worst thing about real evil is that it doesn't care about your belief system. It exists regardless of whether you acknowledge it or not. Alex's 3 best friends are gone. They're trapped in a place between life and death, forced to exist as part of something monstrous. And Alex is still here, alive, but not living. He's just waiting for the messages to stop, or waiting for them to be strong enough to come for him. He's not sure which outcome he should be hoping for. Before you leave this channel, I need to ask you something. If this story terrified you, if you felt that chill run down your spine, if you found yourself holding your breath during the escape scene, if you're now questioning whether you'll ever go camping again, then you already know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, because if enough people know the truth, if enough people understand what's really out there, then maybe we can warn the next group of friends before they make the same mistake. Maybe we can save someone's life. Comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me if you believe. Tell me if you've ever felt something watching you in the woods. Tell me if you know of other places like Blackwood Forest, because your comments might save someone's life. Your story might be the warning someone else needs. Share this video with everyone you know. Send it to your friends. Post it on social media, because the more people who know, the harder it is for these things to hide. The harder it is for them to operate in the shadows. The forest is waiting, but I'm hoping you're smarter than they were. I'm hoping you'll stay away. Subscribe, like, comment, share, because on the next Halloween, when the veil grows thin, when the boundaries between worlds become permeable, the thing in Blackwood Forest will be hunting again. It's always hunting, and somewhere, right now, 4 friends might be making the same decision Ben, Sarah, Jill, and Alex made. You might be able to save them. All it takes is knowing the truth. All it takes is believing, and please, whatever you do, don't go into the woods on Halloween, because they're waiting, and they're hungry, very hungry.